My name is Duncan Waldron, and covering the competency system. Tuesday we took a look at really the learner perspective, what it looks like as a assessor to come in, perform a competency assessment on my students, as a student to come in, see those competency assessments that my supervisor or named assessor might have done, look at the personal development plan items that have been assigned to me, complete those. If I have the ability to sign off things like developmental tasks, and then moving over into a little bit of the self-assessment. So if we have a system set up to allow students to assess themselves, being able to do that. We're going to shift gears a little bit today, and what we'll do is take a look at how all that data gets into the back office side of the world. So there's a lot of initial setup to really do things well from that standpoint. If I can make my PowerPoint advance here. This is really just that intro that I mentioned, the things that from Tuesday, why are we doing these competency assessments, really all the role-based training that's out there, and driving some of that supervisor or assessor and student partnership for developing developmental activities, helping build developmental goals. So what we're going to do today is start off with what are the things that really have to be set up at I'm going to say a corporate level, a global level, an enterprise level. And then we'll take a look at where those are actually done. The format today I'm going to be a little bit different. We'll look at basically a slide of information at a high level, and then we'll drive over to the system, take a look at the data there, and just bounce back and forth. So this first slide, those are some of the things we really do at I want to say at a corporate kind of level. And the first one of those is defining proficiency levels. So if you think about Tuesday and making an assessment, you said maybe I have someone that is at a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. That's one of the things that needs to be set again across the organization. Not necessarily the terms, but am I going to have 3 levels? Am I going to have 5 levels? Am I going to have 4 levels? So just a way to define those, and really the idea there, the purpose behind it, is to allow some transferability between sites as I have assessment records coming in. The second thing is creating competency groups. Now, competencies can all be housed at an enterprise level, certainly, and shared across the organization, or they could be housed at individual sites that may have different competencies. But putting them into those bigger groups, professional development skills or supervisory skills, mechanical skills, that grouping is a global setting that really allows, again, searching across sites. Identifying competency types, this is more of a technical setup item if you want to classify competencies as skills versus knowledge, those kind of things. Development plan, importance levels, things like are they critical or are they developmental? And then setting my resource types and categories. Resources we talked about a bit on Tuesday if you were in, things like maybe subject matter experts or books or things that are not courses essentially that I might want to associate with a person, set a target date for them to review, and then be able to go back in and look. And again, the types, things like book, SMA, mentor program, I set it at a corporate level. Everybody gets to use those, and the reason is they get to define the fields. We'll take a look at that. But then also the categories that just help me organize those. Essentially, what you think of as a course catalog structure for housing all those resources or classifying all those resources. The difference here is where I have a single course in my catalog that's tied to a particular area or subject, I could have a resource that fits into multiple categories. We'll take a look at some of those. But I'm going to bounce over now just directly into the system and go over to the administrator side of the world. See if I can type my password in. And take a look at some of those initial setup items. And again, they are primarily handled in the evaluator side of the system. There's this competent menu group here, and that houses things like my competency groups, competencies, proficiency levels. These are site-specific indicators. Didn't chat about those yet because they really are just that, site-specific. If I set performance indicators associated with a competency, I can go through and change the indicators from location to location. And then I have this kind of miscellaneous area, and that's what's going to house those things like my competency types, development plan importance levels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out right here in the middle with proficiency levels. It's one of those things that once it gets set, probably won't change in all likelihood. I have this system set to a 4-point scale. Again, you can have a 3-point scale, you can have a 6-point scale, anything from 1 to 6 there. The purpose of this screen is really just to provide labels for those individual bands. So here, level 2 I call basic application, and I gave it a description. I had another level that's level 3, the skillful application. This could easily be changed to, say, intermediate. And now, anytime I complete an evaluation or an assessment, it's going to be on that scale that reads awareness-based application, intermediate, mastery. So again, nothing that's particularly critical. It's just an initial setup item. The other that I mentioned here that gets set up are my competency groups. And that's those 3 boxes in the icon there at the top of the screen. And right now I have a few different groups set up: mechanical skills, mobile equipment, personal effectiveness, workplace effectiveness. Really, again, nothing more complicated here than thinking about setting up some of the course catalog hierarchy. I just need a way to group my competencies together so it's easier for me to find them and assign those out later. So here, for my group, personal effectiveness, it has a name, it's active, and I have a short description that's, again, an optional field there, as opposed to a group that I've created for mobile equipment. The other 2 odd kind of setup things here that really you'll build one time and just continue to use are into this miscellaneous area. One of those is competency types. You can flag each competency with some kind of type. Here I have them set up knowledge, skills, or behavior. Some folks take a more academic approach there and will classify them as cognitive skills versus kinesthetic skills and those kind of things. But again, just a way to classify those, and it's truly just a type. The other thing here, from a global setup standpoint, that I would do is set my development plan importance level. And here I built 3 levels: critical, developmental, recommended. By all means, if you wanted to raise the argument that developmental and recommended are the same thing, that's fine too. Again, just a way that I can continue to further break things down. But again, all things that are really initial setup items that I build and then I continue to use as I go through and start creating competencies. So I bounce back to my PowerPoint slide there. And we're going to look at all these fields on the screen. But competencies have to belong to a group, just like a course has to belong to a area and subject inside the course catalog. And they can be shared to provide a real inventory of skills between locations. And what I think of as really having a properly laid out system, I want to have as many common competencies as possible, because that's what's going to allow me to look at reports later to say, gosh, I want to run a succession planning report, show me all the people in this employee group that match the skills identified for a particular competency profile. So we'll look at the type, allowing site-specific indicators, who can assess, description, proficiency indicators, resources that are tied to that competency, and then named assessor. So I'm going to bounce back over to the system here. You notice my competencies icon is the one that I neglected there second from the top, just that one green box. I'm going to click on that guy. I do have a filter at the top so I can see my competencies by group. So if I want to see mechanical skills, I can hit apply versus workplace effectiveness and apply. These grids work just the same as the other grids. Inside the system now, it is the parent level grids that allow me to pick different criteria to put inside my grid. But here for, say, this workplace effectiveness, if I open up my customer-focused competency, so that's one competency that belongs to my workplace effectiveness group, it's marked as active. That competency type in this case, knowledge, skill, or behavior, and something that you as an organization can define is listed there. Do you allow site-specific indicators? So if I do not allow site-specific indicators, that means everyone would use the same performance indicators. If you remember on Tuesday, pulling up that list of performance indicators, and we'll look at the same thing here in just 1 second. They're really the behavioral or the observable skills that let me determine whether someone is at level 1, level 2, level 3. So again, I'm going to by default leave that guy off because I want to have my competencies as transferable as possible. Under the assessment area, who can assess this competency? Something we talked about a little bit the other day is defining who would be a qualified assessor. It could be someone's primary supervisor. That's the new one-to-one supervisor field inside the system. It could be a work area supervisor, team supervisor, department supervisor, or a named assessor. Again, any combination here. The one difference is if I have a named assessor, that's going to be someone that I've picked out that says they happen to have the skills to do an assessment on this particular competency. So it helps me limit my pool of who can assess. There's also a checkbox that lets me override that setting by profile. Say, okay, why in the world would you want to do that, Duncan? I can build my competencies again at a corporate level, and I may have a particular person that or a particular site that uses that competency, but they want to have a different group of people provide the assessments, and you can allow them to override that. If not, they're stuck with how you set that competency up. So a description here for customer focus, I'm actively looking for ways to meet customer or client needs. I can have a custodian associated with that competency just like a course. My tabs across the top allow me to set my proficiency indicators, first thing. So here I will say at a basic awareness level, it says that I can plan tasks of the works completed on time, and next is prioritize competing tasks, and the next is estimate resources for project completion. Again, you notice that this one says intermediate, so we made that change to the global settings for those guys just a moment ago. So again, all I'm doing here is building out my list. I'm going to back up just a step here, and I'm going to switch over to one of those more technical skills. So maybe my mobile equipment, and I'll hit apply there, and I'll open up this carry tech crane operation. It's a little bit different in the way that I have the indicators set up. In that case, my competency to operate a crane, my level 1 is something like setting up and performing pre-operation checks, where number 2 is actually preparing a work area, documenting unsafe work practices, those kind of things. So again, just the things that I would watch for as I'm doing an assessment to see whether or not somebody fits into that level. The third icon there across the top of my competency window is any resources that I want to tie to that competency. In this case, I've already set a crane manual and a crane inspector or trainer that can be used as a subject matter expert there. I'm going to open one of these guys up just so you have a chance to see them. We haven't created any resources yet. We'll do that over in the catalog menu group inside Administrator, just a few minutes here. But these I already have set up, and they're broken down again into their categories. This just happens to be a book, and it's, in this case, the Broderson Crane Manual, and it helps support the basic application and the intermediate level. If I wanted to go in and add a new resource here, I'm just going to search because I don't have a huge volume of resources set up, but I can look and say, gosh, I could do this resource for the crane manual, for the inspector, for the construction handbook. But I also have on my team building and leadership things. Gosh, I don't care to see any of those. I'm going to filter those out of my search and get rid of anything that's not mobile equipment specific. Again, I can search at a specific site because just like my course catalog, each site can have a catalog of resources, or I can do that across all locations. So I'm going to cancel out here, not save a new resource. This final tab is for my named assessors, and this is where I can come in and say, for this particular competency, Rodney Smith, sorry about that. Rodney Smith can assess it, but he can only assess up to an intermediate level. Maybe he doesn't have the skills or background knowledge necessary to be able to assess up to a mastery level. So one of the unique things about having named administrators, outside of the fact that you can have, named assessors, outside of the fact that you can have named assessors versus forcing just supervisors to do the assessments, is you can also limit the scope of the assessments that they do or the maximum level they can assess someone to. Again, that person could be active or that assessor could be active or inactive. So I'm going to hit OK there. And that's really the process that I'm going to follow to go through and build my library of competencies again. If I can just switch through groups there, build those guys out. Now if I have competencies created inside the system, the thing I need to do with those, so there's some value outside of just searching the course catalog by competency, is to build a profile. So profiles are really the thing that I'm going to assess against. So they're my key to assessment. They can be site-specific or shared. I encourage you to consider the possibilities of sharing because it helps to keep those assessments in a little more standard format. That's where I define the target levels that someone needs to reach, and that's where I assign them to an employee group. And I'm going to do all of that inside the administrator piece of the system. So I'm going to switch from evaluator here over to administrator. And you see under my people group, about halfway down, I have competency profiles. Right now I just have 2 competency profiles in my list that I could build multiples. This one for skilled construction labor. On this first page gives me a place to put the name of that profile. So I need to be able to find that for doing any reporting or searching for that guy. I can set the visibility. So it could be, like in this case, I have it set to all sites, so everybody across the organization could assign or see that competency profile for skilled construction labor, or I could restrict it to my site only or just my relatives. So if I was in a parent-child structure site, I could limit that. Again, I have a description, I can have a custodian, just send it through common fields across the system. But again, this is just the title. The thing that I need to do now is associate competencies with that. So if you think about a parallel inside administrator that you may be using now, where you say, gosh, I have a team and I need to associate requirements. Very similar process here. So I have my competency profile defined as skilled construction labor, and I'll go to this next tab and I'll associate it with some specific competencies. And if I open up this first one, you see all the options there. Now it's grayed out because I've already selected mobile equipment for my competency side, and the competency is carry deck crane operation. I can set a complexity, a criticality, and a frequency of use. Again, these are on a 1 to 10 scale, and really just they're designed for reporting. So if I want to look at my competencies and say, gosh, if this one is super critical, but the frequency of use is very high. I do it every day. Like driving a car, I may not have a hard need to do training regularly. Or if I say, gosh, something is very critical, but I only do it once a year, the need for training is much greater in my mind. So I need to stay fresh on those skills. Again, what's the target proficiency level that I'm shooting for? Is it awareness, basic application, intermediate, mastery? Again, looks very similar to the competency itself, where I say who can assess, and I can use my defaults, or I can override those if I'm allowing a site to override the defaults. If I want to add some named assessors in this case, I can add named assessors, again, just for this particular profile at my location. So here I could say that, Chris Ringel can also act as a named assessor, even though he may not be a supervisor for those students that are assigned that profile. The final tab is the profile groups, and that's really my assignment. So in this case, I have this particular competency profile assigned to both the group, all students, and also single student, Melanie Wiseman. But if I open up one of those guys, you'll see this looks just like making any other assignments. Where I pick my group, if it's a single employee, then it's one person. Then I can pick up if it's mandatory or developmental. So all I'm doing is going through and say if I wanted to assign it to a new group, I could do that and maybe pick out my job title for forklift operation team, right? And then now everyone who has that job title is going to pick up that competency profile and have that thing assigned. So I've gone through the steps, doing that base setup, building my competencies, and now associating them with a profile so that a supervisor can come through and start doing assessments. And that's what we looked at over in Learner the other day. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bounce over into Learner real quick. So I know I have a couple folks that did not make Tuesday's meeting that are in. I don't want to neglect everybody completely. So this is just the My Learner area. I'm logged in as Lisa there. If I go and pick a person and want to complete a competency profile on them, this is where I would see that. Again, that assessment kind of function based on the profiles that are assigned. In this case, if I want, I can move through those options. And again, if you remember looking at the development plan, we looked at these guys. These are the things that are assigned to the employee to help them build their skills in the system. We looked at it by target date. What's due in less than 30 days, less than 60 days, less than 90 days. But I can also look at them by profile. So here, I say, here's my skills construction label list of development plan items. So again, another way of filtering inside the system. We bounce back over. Take a look at that next PowerPoint slide page. So we talked about building these assessments and then letting supervisors assess their employees. And that next step was, if someone did have a performance gap, you wanted to be able to assign them something on their personal development plan that would let them build their skills to help support or meet a competency. And the two primary things there are courses and resources. The third was tasks, and tasks are just items that I say this person needs to do for some target date to help build their skills. I think the example we used on Tuesday was you can lead the next 5 team meetings to help build your meeting leadership skills, or draft the departmental staff notes to help build technical writing skills. So courses and resources are the two things that can be used that really get housed more in a library fashion. And I imagine everyone is comfortable with the course catalog. There's really just a minor change there, adding the competency tab. And if you remember looking at searching competencies in VTA Learner, that they could span multiple competency proficiency levels there. And resources, again, a new animal, so we'll take a look at that guy too. That's where we're going to define those types and set up resources that can support development. So here, if I go to my catalog area, my course catalog button is right here at the top, and I'm already drilled down into my supervisory skills area, and I happen to have a course called Leadership and Team Building. If you look across the top, just to the right of your documents icon, there's a new icon for competencies. And in this case, the interpersonal skills competency out of the personal effectiveness group has already been associated. I'm going to open that guy up. We'll take a look at what's on that screen, and then we'll add one. So out of my competency group, personal effectiveness, my competency names, integrity, this particular course has been deemed to support it at the mastery level. Now, the way these radio buttons work, I can choose whether that course does not support, supports, or meets that competency. Meets is kind of a rare case. Things like CPR certification, where if I go to the class, I perform the physical evaluation, and they actually certify me as being competent in that skill. In the vast majority of courses I go to, I get to the end of it, and then I have improved my skills, hopefully, but I still possibly need an assessment to do that. But I could say that this course supports across multiple levels. The only thing I can't do is say that it supports at the mastery level or the basic application level and the mastery level, but not at the intermediate level. So there's an assumption that these are at least linear in this case. So to my existing course catalog, I can associate with my newly added competencies. The other thing I can do is I can build resources. Now, resources in my mind become a much bigger animal because it can be a bank that continues to grow, not unlike your course catalog. So here I'm looking at all my resources. I could filter or sort these guys if I wanted, but I've just added a few. And remember, my two resource types were books and subject matter experts. One of the things I did up front is I defined the fields associated with my resource types. So for a book, I said a book needs a title field and a link to Amazon. So again, these are completely user definable, and something to think about going in is what types of resources do you regularly have. So I can build those fields because when I go over to that next one, the subject matter expert, that's someone that is already a student inside my system, so I'm just picking out a student. Again, is that resource visible to just my site or to multiple sites? What categories does it fit into? And again, this is just to help students as they are coming into the system and needing to search for those resources or assessors as they are going in and making assessments and needing to find those guys. And you notice the unique thing here is I can have the same resource associated with multiple categories because they could span there. It's not a one-to-one relationship like you have with areas of something course catalog. I can include search tags. I can put it in the description. I can have a custodian. I'm going to go to my next one here in the list that happens to be a subject matter expert. And the subject matter expert, I'm just associating with a person. So again, once I build my resource types, I can begin building that resource library out. Again, I always think of that as kind of a bigger second phase, one of those things that always grows and changes there. And that's why I can make those things active or inactive as their applicability changes. The place where I build these resources, these resource types out, is here under the miscellaneous area inside administrator. And I won't spend a lot of time there because it's really one of those things that gets primarily shared across locations. And here are my resource types. I'm going to leave that page and not make a change. Right now I've got a subject matter expert. I have a book. If I open up books, remember I had a couple different fields. The first thing is just my title and is it active, and then what fields to include. I say I'm going to have a title that is going to be a text field, and I'll have a link to Amazon that's a URL. If I wanted to add another field to that screen, I might call this my ISBN number. And what kind of field is that? Well, I'm going to make it a number and limit it to some length of number. Is it required? Give it a description. So now anytime I add a resource, I have the opportunity to add an ISBN number. I could come in and say I want to add the author. Since it's a book, probably be better if I spelled it correctly. And in that case, it's not a student necessarily, somebody out of our course catalog. It's just going to be a name, so I put in a character field and say that we give hundreds character span to put in an author's name. So again, purely your option as you build what kind of resources you're going to use inside the system. These other icons that you may not have seen here. I have my resource categories. That's where that's where I can build out my hierarchy tree, essentially like a course catalog, and then I can add search terms. So again, all the way to get that resource data inside the system. The one thing that has been added as far as getting in and seeing all this data, which obviously is critical if you're going to put it in, there are 3 new tabs on the student record. We'll take a quick look at those, and then we'll take a look at some of the reporting options before we break over into questions. So I'm going to go back up to my people area, and because assessments are being done on people, because personal development plans are being associated with people, if I take a look at Richard Arnold, my little test employee that I was working with the other day, you see that over to the right of employee documents, we have personal development plan items, assessment history, and competency profiles that are assigned to him. If you haven't moved into 7.0 yet, this is a new icon for you as well, way out on the end, and that's delegates. So if a supervisor performs or approves training that's been assigned to a student or approves training someone requests, that supervisor could go in and set up delegates that could make approvals for him or her. So that's what that last icon is there. They're not really associated with the competency system. Here, if I take a look at that very first item, my personal development plan items, these are all the things that an assessor has recommended that I take to help improve my skills. So in this case, a couple different courses, a few different tasks have been assigned. So if I open up this guy, it shows that on 7/31, July 31st, an assignment was made to plan 3 critical lists and give a target date of September 30th. Right now I don't have a completion date because presumably it hasn't been completed, but this is set up as that the student could complete it, or if I go in, I can add a completion date manually as an administrator. So again, likely not something that an administrator is going to day in and day out worry about, and they're generally not adding development plan items. You think of it as something that comes from the supervisor assessment, but you still have access to that data from the student record. I can also see their assessment history. Now, in this case, all I have is a browse option, right? Because you see that clearly I use this Lisa Boss, Richard Arno combination a lot for playing around inside the system, working inside the system. I can see that on 3/19, that competency interpersonal skills was assessed by Lisa Boss to an intermediate proficiency level. She didn't leave any comments there. But one thing I cannot do as an administrator is go back in and change an assessor's actual comments, change their assessment. An assessor can't break me at an intermediate level and have an administrator go in and change me to a mastery level on that. So again, really just a view of that information. Of course, it's a grid that I can export. And the final item there, all the way over to the right, are any individual profiles that have been assigned to me. Because just like assigning courses to a job title or team, when we looked at assigning profiles earlier, I can also assign a profile just directly to a person. So this is a high potential leadership profile that I'm going to assign to this group of folks that are my new potential leaders. So again, that's the big change from a student record standpoint that you can see inside the system. The last real piece as far as data and getting set up here are all of the reports associated. And right now there's a good handful of reports in my mind, and we'll take a look at some of these guys over the next few minutes here before we break into some question time. But I can list competencies, show the proficiency indicators in a detailed view. I can list profiles, see the competencies and the target proficiency levels for those. I can search courses to meet competencies. I can look at assessment history. So if I'm interested in when a person was assessed, the fact that they can be assessed multiple times and we see their skills improve, I can do that. I can look at a profile gap report. So if I want to, say if you have large competency profiles and a big group of employees, I just want to see the places where there's a gap in between assessed performance and what the target level is. I can see just those. I can do a profile match report, which is letting me go through and say, for a group of employees who matches this particular profile, and then there's a succession planning report, which is kind of a unique animal. I can pick a person, and then I can pick a group of candidates and find out, based on that group of candidates, which ones of those map to my person's competency profiles, and based on their assessments and what gaps are there. So we'll take a look at some of these guys. All those competency reports are back at Evaluator, where we already have the competency group. So you see my item there at the bottom, right above my report favorites, is competencies. So just bouncing through, same kind of who, what, when, and where format that you've seen on most of our report menus. So on this what tab here, I can select again by competency group, by profile. I'm going to select my skilled construction profile. I can do it as a summary or a detail. When I do that, all I'm doing is listing competencies, so nothing particularly earth-shattering here. These guys always open up on my second monitor, so I'm going to slide that guy over. So for the mechanical skills group, the competency construction activity is yes. What site does it live in? What's the skill? What is the type of skill? If I change that to a detail, get more in-depth information, I can include showing the site-specific indicators if I want to there. And now what that's going to show me is, for this particular profile, mechanical skills is the group construction activity. I can see the name, who can assess my indicators. So at the awareness level, can they demonstrate a basic understanding? At the application level, can they have proper care of equipment? At the intermediate level, demonstrate proper techniques. Again, all that data that I've put in, just coming out in list format, really no different than things like listing courses, listing employees. Listing profiles is a bit different, because here if I grab my skilled construction labor profile, and again, I'll run that in both a summary and a detailed format, I can go through, and what that's going to show me, again, this is my summary format. It's going to show my skilled construction labor, who the custodian is. Really, it's essentially a course, similar to a course detail report, where I get to see all the specific competencies assigned, the target proficiency level, complexity, frequency, criticality. In a detail format, again, just continuing to expand the data that's included there, the data really, in my mind, that's not suppressed there. I get to see that same profile name, the custodian, the profile group, so who it's been assigned to, and then I've got my target proficiency level. Here I have a few different grids that show complexity, frequency, and criticality, so I can then see where they fit on those grids. Who can assess, and then again moving on to my next, so it's a little more data there. The courses for competency report really just similar to a matrix, and I can show those by profile or competency group. But I'm just going to do a more particular profile here. And now when I run that report, it will give me what looks very much like the status grids that you've seen inside the system to this point, where I can see now my competency, courses that support that competency, and to what level. So here, interpersonal skills, I have 4 different courses that all support it. This one at the app-based application intermediate level, this one at the awareness and application level, this one at the mastery level. So again, just listing. The more critical reports in my mind are the ones that really go back and look at assessment data, and those are my status type reports. So assessment status is just that. Let me pick a student, and I'm going to grab Richard here since I have been using him as my test student. On the What tab, do I want to do this for all profiles or for a specific profile? Do I want to include the assessor assessments, self-assessments? Do I want to include both? Do I want to include comments? All of those kind of things. And then what's my target date? I'm going to leave this as just the default of today. So now when I generate that report, it's going to show me, blow that guy up, for Richard out of mechanical skills, construction activities, an assessor has marked him as having met one of those skills. He has not done a self-assessment there. Under mobile equipment, there are two different competencies assigned. He's met one of the 2 in both his assessor assessment and his self-assessment. If I want to open that up into a detailed format, it's really going to show me each assessment that was physically done on which, well, I guess the most current assessment will show actually the target level and the specific assessment that was selected. Very, very similar to looking at, if I can bounce back over to Learner and look at a competency assessment, this information that shows up on the competency assessment screen proper inside Learner. So let me close my PDF there. I'm going to move back to my reports. The assessment history, just that, lets me go through, and I'm going to use Richard again because I have a good volume of data there. What do I want to show? All profiles, selected profiles again, assessor assessments, self-assessments, and just do assessor assessments. And when I'm, sorry, about that, what did I not select there? What? When? See, at least one option in these sections show. Oh, I do an assessment detail or a graph. This is essentially like when you run a status report, and you will show it graphically as a report proper. So here, if I run that, I can see that for construction activities, Lisa assessed him, he assessed himself, put some comments in, and again, the dates of each of those guys. So it lets me go back through and look at all that assessment history. My profile gap report, I know one that a lot of people talk about regularly and want to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an entire department here, or a couple departments, and on my What tab, look at, I'll say grab all of those profiles, but I just want to see the gaps. So I'm going to run a summary report now. All it's going to do is give me a count of gaps so that I can further drill down. But now, if I take a look at this guy, Brittany Amos is assigned. Let's use Richard there. For his first line supervisor profile, he has a gap for workplace effectiveness. For his skilled construction labor, he has a gap for mechanical skills and mobile skills. If I want to drill down into further detail that's when I can come back in, select that detail option, and then find out the specific information about those competencies that have been assigned that he had gaps on. You still with me? Okay, I don't think I know it. Not worry about it. So that's the gap report. These last two, again, a little more specialty items. See, that profile match lets me pick a student or a group of students and say, who matches a particular profile, again, either in summary or detail. So assuming Richard was assigned that, he would have met 1 of 1 on mechanical skills, he would have met 1 of 2 on mobile equipment. Lisa's met 0 of those. Adam has met 1 of 1 of 2. Again, Dale has met everything for that particular profile, at least from an assessor standpoint. He hasn't done any self-assessments there. So again, just looking at matching the assessments that are in my history to the students that I want to assess, and then finally that succession planning report. This is where I can say, my incumbents are. Let me grab. I give a department here again. I'll grab the administration department, and my candidates, my candidates are. I'm going to swap those. I'm going to do my incumbent is a single student, Richard, and my candidates are anyone from the administration department. What I want to see is developmental items, mandatory both, so I want a summary or a detail, count met by assessor, met by self. And what I get to see then is if, look at that, I ran through these this morning. Doggone it. Always happens in a demo. What I get to see is if I had anyone that might be looking to move into Richard's role, that he or she has met those profiles that have been assigned to Richard, and see what the gaps are that exist as of today. So again, trying to get all that data back out into the system and figure out what's really valuable for employees as they're moving forward. So again, like any new system or new version release, we tend to target the reports that are going to be most valuable based on feedback we get with you guys and the stuff that we sit around and brainstorm here, looking at other complementary systems. But but I always feel like there are things that tend to grow and change. So almost any new feature, the report set, I always look at it as an evolutionary process as it starts to get some legs and people begin to use it. So I was going to open up really for questions, and kind of in summary on my side, the things you have to do is you have to look at what your program is going to, or define how your program is going to work. Again, because lots of information needs to be set up. A lot of it, if you're going to really leverage moving people between organizations or doing cross-company assessments, important to go through and lay out some of the rules around those, the governance options there. You have to, in order to be successful, support both the students and the assessors in a rollout, or what are the things that they need to start using these kind of tools and programs put in place, because there's additional work that's being pushed onto their side, additional or increased expectation there. So certainly something that is worth spending some time upfront laying out as you begin to move forward. So, with that, questions, thoughts? I've unmuted everyone. So,
Duncan.
Yes, ma'am.